And good evening from Philadelphia. Frank Stalter here, doing a special Tuesday evening edition of UFO News Network Sunday. James, again, is off tonight. He's been busy working lots of overtime. Maybe some of you folks have seen this in the news, but Jackie Gleason's UFO house is up for sale. The asking price is only $12 million, and James is working a lot of overtime in an effort to get the money together to put down a down payment on that place. So he's looking to buy it and perhaps move in by Halloween, Thanksgiving at the latest. But tonight, I've got Stefan Verstappen with me. Stefan is the author of a number of books on the subject of psychopaths, which is primarily what we're going to be speaking about tonight. But also, he's the author of The Art of Urban Survival, a family safety and self-defense manual, The 36 Strategies of Ancient China, and Defense Against the Psychopath. He's also got a video put together of that on YouTube, which is easy enough to find, Defense Against the Psychopath. And again, we're going to be spending a lot of time on that tonight, as well as Blind Zen, martial arts and Zen for the blind and vision impaired. Stefan, thanks for coming on tonight. I sure do appreciate it.
No problem, Frank. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure a lot of you folks in the audience are wondering, and maybe Stefan is too, why would I invite somebody who's an expert on psychopaths to appear on a UFO show? But if you think about it, it's a term that's getting thrown around more and more these days, even in the UFO field. Dr. Stephen Greer has openly discussed the psychopaths who are keeping the truth of the UFO phenomenon, at least as he sees it, from the public, as well as suppressing free energy knowledge. Again, that's his opinion, but the people responsible for all that, as far as Dr. Greer is concerned, are psychopaths. There are some other high-profile people who throw the psychopath, the P word, around fairly frequently, and they do touch on the UFO subjects now and again. One of them is David Icke, who spends a lot of time talking about how psychopaths rule the earth, and also how the earth is sometimes ruled by reptilian lizard people who run our world. I'm not so sure about that particular theory, but he does lean hard on the P word, as does another fellow who's been in the news lately, Alex Jones. He once in a while, now and again, touches on UFOs. He throws the P word around quite a bit in describing the people who run the world. And well, I can't say that I agree with any of those three guys all the time. I can certainly say that they are throwing the P word around a fair amount, and they might not be wrong about that, that psychopaths might well run this earth. And Stefan Verstappen, as I would say, carved out a real unique niche for himself in terms of expertise on this field. You're not a medical doctor. You don't have that kind of background, correct, Stefan?
No, I don't. I had
And
2 years of college psychology,
okay.
but I never let that interfere with my education.
Got it. Understood. Understood. And you've taken a closer look at least one aspect of that, which is the issue of psychopaths. And again, Stefan's carved out kind of a unique niche for himself. He is really focused on, recognizing and really defending yourself in your normal day-to-day life against these malignant types.
Yeah, I didn't set out to become an expert on psychopaths. That wasn't my intention at all. And I think, my video Defense Against a Psychopath, it's just about 10 years old now. And I think it helped spur the common knowledge about psychopaths, because before my video came out, I didn't hear anybody really talking about it too much. And then my video came out, and then now recently everybody is using the psychopath terminology to describe events. And it's good and it's bad all at the same time, but we do have to raise awareness. But the reason I became an expert in psychopaths is because I have always been what you would call a seeker of truth. This started with me at a very young age when I was 12 years old. And, that's when I started reading about UFOs as well. Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods. I read that book, I think, 4 times when I was like 13, and, I loved it. But I was always looking for for truth and the answers, the big questions.
Sure, sure.
You've heard it once, you've heard it 100 times. There's certain people like me and you probably, Frank, that are born that way. We're just born. We want to know. We want to
Right,
know.
right.
And not because we want power or to self-aggrandize ourselves or become great preachers. No, we just want to know for our own curiosity. I think curiosity is the key ingredient to learning. I mean, if you're curious about things, you want to learn about it, and then it's fun to learn. You can't teach somebody who has no curiosity. You'd have to force them. You'd have to beat them. Think of public education, for example. Kills curiosity, right? Kills it right away. So now you have to imprison children in these institutions for 12 years. Ridiculous. Anyways, so one of the big questions, Frank, was why is there so much evil in the world? I mean, we have the resources, we have the technology, we have the money, we have, everything we need to make a paradise on earth. I mean, there's no need for anyone to go hungry or to be homeless or to suffer from, debilitating diseases. All of that is easily within our grasp to make it a paradise. So how come it's not? How come instead, when I read history, and I love history, why is history a 4,000-year litany of murder and war and torture and killing and imprisonment and enslavement over and over again? It doesn't matter which country's history you study, from China to Japan to Rome to, France and England, every history, it's war, murder, enslavement, war, murder. I mean, it's just insane. We are a species that are insane. We could have just said, okay, let's build paradise, and then there's no need for war and murder and robbery and enslavement. We could have had this paradise already for the last 2,000 years. So one of my questions, in going through life, the meaning of life, why is there all this evil in the world? And I started to recognize a pattern when I was researching history, a pattern of the personality types of the rulers and the aristocracy and the kings and the emperors and the queens. And man, these were nasty people. Almost no one ever in the history throughout Europe and Asia and South America, or, no one became king without at least murdering a couple of dozen of their close family members,
Right.
And so, well, what does that tell you? That the rulers, the people that get to become the rulers, are the type of people that are willing to murder their parents, murder their brothers and sisters, their aunts and their uncles and their own kids. They'll murder anybody that gets in their way. They'll poison them. They'll lock them up. They'll imprison them, starve them to death. They will kill people. So what we have is a 4,000-year history of serial killers in charge of things. So, I mean, the evidence is undeniable. So when, you were saying, like David Icke was saying, the psychopaths rule the world, but actually in that I have to agree with David Icke as well. Psychopaths do rule the world. Our society, everything in it is a product of sick, twisted minds, because if you weren't sick and twisted, you would not create the system that we live under now. So what are these people that, now, psychology, and most importantly, the work of people like Harvey Checkley and Robert Hare, who did the original kind of research into psychopathy and helped coin the term psychopathy. Well, I think Checkley called it people of the lie.
Okay. Just to put in, what kind of years are we talking about when they coined that term? It can't be that old. It can't be much more than a century old if it's that.
No, Harvey Checkley is. Oh boy, I'm going off the top of my head now. It's in the bibliography in the pamphlet "Defense Against the Psychopath" that you can download from my website. But I'm thinking 1950s.
Okay. Because
that,
you dropped the E word a couple of times, evil, and I think that sort of connotes like evil spirits and some sort of possession and paranormality. Sadly, there's nothing paranormal about this at all. This is something we got to kind of live with and figure out what to do about.
Well, yeah, because again, I'm a very practical person. So for me to use the term evil, I'm using it on purpose, because it is, like you said, has a religious, moral connotation. But there's no other word to describe what these people are. You can say they're deranged. You can say they're narcissistic. You can say they don't have a conscience, that they're malevolent, that they're destructive. Yeah, that would all apply. But if you wanted to use one word that would actually describe what they are, and that is evil, I have tried to find a mechanism by which psychopaths would fit into human, or not human nature, but nature in general. And we have three relationships in nature. We have predatory, we have symbiotic, and we have parasitic. Those are the three interspecies relationships that we have. You either kill something and eat it, or you cooperate together, or you're a parasite. And so psychopaths would fall under the survival strategy of parasitism. That's what they are. They're parasites. They live off of other people. And now that may, I don't believe it because there's just not enough empirical evidence. But if you were to say that they are interdimensional parasites that suck off of your life energy, that would be a way to describe it. I can't say there's any proof or evidence that that's what happens, but that would be a way to describe it. So previous to, Hervey Checkley and Robert Hare and a couple of others that kind of coined the term psychopath starting in the 50s and more recently in the early 90s with Robert Hare's books, The Mask of Sanity. Prior to that, there was no way to describe these people. So I think in medieval times, they used the terms vampire and ghoul or demonic possession because that was the only tools they had to describe these type of people. They didn't have science, they didn't have brain imaging, they didn't have genetic research. There was no way to tell what were these things, what were these people. And again, the key word is evil. So if you were a medieval, scholar and you came across these people, well, you'd have to use a biblical reference and refer to them as demonic. But with modern research, we have another word for it. Now we have psychopathy. But to be honest with you, is psychopathy any more accurate than saying demonic? I don't know. Again, I'm not saying they are demonic. I'm just saying that we think that science always has a better explanation. And now that we've come up with a new word, that means it's better. We can all make up words. I could call them, fabogots, and everybody, oh, well, now that's scientific, fabogots. It just because you're renaming something doesn't mean it's necessarily better. However, there is now, with modern scientific research into brain scans and genetic research, we now do see that there is something different about the brains of these people. So psychopath is what the term that we use now, but it's used to describe a segment of our population that is so dysfunctional and frankly evil. They're morally bankrupt. But it's more than that because, like I said, I tried to figure out, and I'm pretty sure they're using a parasite strategy. We all use survival strategies. Most of us use the strategy of symbiosis. You and I work together. We start a business. We sell some products. We make money. I'm not murdering Frank in his sleep and stealing his stuff. So, most of us work in a symbiotic kind of relationship in our society. These people are always parasites and often predators too. The serial killer for example, would be the predator type. But even in nature, even studying predators and parasites, you do not come across any other animal on the planet that enjoys torture, that enjoys seeing its prey suffer, and psychopaths do. They love to see it. No other creature on the planet would starve another species to death just for the sheer pleasure of seeing them starve to death. We do. Psychopaths do. So there's something more to it. There's something more to it, Frank.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned taking a couple of years worth of courses in psychology in college, and I was kind of curious. The psychological community, they've they've got this knowledge, they know this, but they seem awfully apprehensive in terms of really discussing it openly and really spreading that around. It seems it takes mavericks like yourself, and Ian Hughes is another guy who's over in Europe, a physicist from all backgrounds, who's discussing the undue influence that psychopaths have on our world. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't trust universities. I think if you have a degree from a university, it's basically a certificate of stupidity. You have to understand that the people that go through it's a system, it's a machine, and all these professors that teach these different courses, with a few exceptions like STEM, like the STEM subjects, they are at least based on mathematics and mechanics and things that can be verifiable and replicated. But a lot of this stuff like philosophy, psychology, they're taught by professors that read books written by other professors that read books that were written by other professors. I mean, it's fourth-hand information. And if you knew college professors, to say that your college professor does not bestow, in my mind, the authority of authenticity. I mean, look at I don't know if you following the riots and the Antifa and things like that.
Oh
And
yeah, I get to look at that, and we might get into the politics of what's going on today a little bit as well.
so look at the politics of what's going on. Look at these lunatics that are dressed up in these weird outfits, and then they're beating people with bicycle locks and screaming at reporters that you're not allowed here. They're all college professors.
Some of them are, yep, some of
A
them are.
lot of them are. How the hell did I wouldn't guess that they would be qualified to teach kindergarten, but they're college professors. So, all this information that we get nowadays, and again, this is part of our psychopathic culture, and so that college professors are avoiding, or they're very hesitant to talk about psychopathy. I don't know why, because I think it's probably the most important subject psychology and psychiatry should be studying, because it is singly responsible for like 90% of the misery and suffering that occurs among not just people but animals and nature. I mean, these people are destroying the planet. They're killing and inflicting pain and suffering everywhere. I think they should be studied quite intensively.
Right, exactly.
But they
Now,
don't do it.
in the political realm, I see so much criticism, and a lot of times the criticism is just, you see a terrorist attack or a physical attack of one type or another. But people have a tendency to focus on sort of the symptom, and the symptom, this psychopathy can pop up anywhere. So really, you can be of any religion, you can be of any race, you can be of any political persuasion. You can be a psychopath and do something really, really horrible. And because you do that doesn't mean that every other member of your religion is a horrible person. Doesn't mean every other member of your race or nationality or ethnic background, anything like that. But if that group is large enough, there are going to be some psychopaths in there, and they're likely to do some serious damage. And when people point the finger at the evil act, they're often criticizing the symptom, which is the local identity of who's ever doing the evil act, and not the underlying disease. If I explain that, okay.
Sure, yeah. And that's the problem with the psychopaths. I mean, for example, you could, like, religion gets a bad rep, and for good reasons as well.
It's
But
attracted a lot of psychopaths over the years, but
bec-
they feed a
because,
lot of people too. They do a lot of that stuff too.
but they do a lot of good too,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because it's one guy, excuse my language, shits in the punch bowl, it just ruins it for everybody.
Right.
And so you get these lunatic psychopaths that take advantage of people. Because the other thing too is, with certain subjects like religion, like psychiatry, and even like UFOs and Bigfoot and Loch Ness monster and all that kind of stuff, you have a ready-made audience of people that are already suspending disbelief. You see, let's take psychiatry or psychology for an example. because they're all college professors and they have the DSMV and they wear white lab coats. And then they tell people that the reason they're depressed is because there's a chemical imbalance in the brain. And, you know, and so you need to take these drugs. Now, there's not a shred of truth in any of that. They don't know what chemicals in the brain. Name the chemicals. Give me the chemical formulas. And what is the difference between balanced chemicals in the brain and imbalanced chemicals in the brain? They can't answer any of these questions because the problem is you can't see into the brain. I cannot look into Frank's mind and see exactly what's going on, what Frank's thoughts are, or what Frank's feelings are, or what Frank's instincts are. I can't see into your mind. Anything would be just third-hand information from an outside observer. And it's the same thing with these psychiatrists. So for them to come up with some idea that, oh, well, we have this chemical imbalance and we have to put you all on drugs. And of course, what drugs? How do you know this drug is going to cure the imbalance? We don't know. Basically, what they're doing is feeding you opium. That's been around for 6,000 years.
Right.
Everybody knows you feel a lot better after a hit of opium.
Yeah.
So that's basically what they're doing. It's synthesized opium. It's opiates, and the source of the scourge of the OxyContin scourge that we have now in the States. Where did that all come from? Whoa, the chemical imbalance and all of it is just a big lie. They don't know what they're talking about. But you have an audience that is predisposed to disbelief. So you get this guy in a white lab coat, and he's going to tell you about something he has no way of knowing. They don't know what goes on in the mind. They don't know what the chemicals are involved. They don't know why people are insane. They don't know why people are schizophrenic. They don't know why people are psychopathic. They don't know why they're psychotic. They don't know anything. It's all a big lie. But now you're in the university, you paid, $15,000 a year to be there. You are going to suspend disbelief because you don't want to tell yourself that you spent all this time and money to have a bunch of lunatics bullshit to you about stuff they have no possible way of knowing. So that's the problem.
And also the solution is usually pretty easy. Take 2 of these and call me in the morning. That helps them a little bit too, as compared with, gee, you might want to change your diet around. That might help you feel a little bit better. You might want to do a little bit of exercise, something along those lines. You have to get off your ass and do a little bit of work.
Yeah, and notice that. Well, I noticed there is no psychological treatment that involves diet and exercise. No, none of it.
Yeah. Yeah,
they never studied
helps.
it. They never explored it. They never take it into consideration. At least take it into consideration. It wouldn't be that difficult to come up with a study to find whether or not depression is related to people's diets and things like that. It's an easy study. I could come up with that. Give me a couple of $1 million. I'll get started. But they don't.
I'll cut you a check. Okay.
Okay.
I'm getting my checkbook out right now. There.
Make it out cash. Make it out
Okay.
cash.
Okay. So it's fascinating and it's disturbing at the same time. I know a little bit about the UFO field, and I don't know that I would describe anyone who's actually in the field. And there's a lot of snake oil salesmen. Let's not kid ourselves. But you might not know. But listeners at home, let's not kid ourselves. There's more than 1 or 2 private sector opportunists. People who are out there spreading bad information in the field, making up ridiculous claims, and so on. I don't know that anyone in the field quite rises to the level of psychopath, though. That's a pretty hard, reasonably high bar to get over. But I do think there are a few sociopaths, likely even more narcissists. Can you break down how the gradations work a little bit for the folks at home who might not be that familiar with it? Psychopath, sure. I guess, would be the worst. Sociopath, kind of in the middle, and someone with NPD or narcissistic personality disorder, which is actually quite different than somebody who spends all their time looking in the mirror. That's not exactly what that is. But yeah, if you could break it down for the folks at home a little bit, that would help a lot, I think.
Okay, so again, I don't have a degree in psychology, but I have spent 16 years now, more than that, 20 years researching the subject. Now, if you spend 20 years reading all the papers, all the books, watching all the videos, listening to all the lectures. You get to be pretty good at it. If you were to devote 20 years of your life to studying something, you get pretty good at it. So now with me, I tried to make sense of it using the standard, the Diagnostics and Statistics Manual. God, tongue twister. Diagnostics and Statistics Manual, which is the Bible of the psychiatric industry, in which it is listed all the mental disorders and the symptoms, and it's updated every couple of years. And the problem is that every time it's updated, the meanings have changed around. So the DSM-V definition of psychopathy from 1975 is different than the description of psychopathy from 1995. They changed it. So most people will have heard the terms psychopath, sociopath, and narcissist. And multiple personality disorder, boy, that's another one that's, I'll get to that last.
Okay.
So psychopath and sociopath, it used to be also antisocial personality disorder. It's another one, and bipolar, anti-personality disorder. Anyways, they come up with a bunch of different names, but the descriptions are kind of vague and they cross over a lot. Now, it used to be, what I understood, the first time I read through it, a psychopath was something like a professional, somebody that was like, an entrepreneur, CEO of a company. Now, he's the kind of guy that would, remember the mergers and acquisitions, remember the Wall Street traders, greed is good. What was his name? Michael Milken. This guy was a psychopath. He destroyed thousands of lives by, hostile takeovers of their company, and then causing the bankruptcy of the company so they could sell off the assets, and throwing tens of thousands of people out of work, and stealing their pensions, and just so this guy could have a couple extra millions so that he could afford a few more hookers and a couple more grams of coke. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Unbridled greed and destruction that this guy had reaped throughout the United States, and this was, I think, in the early 80s. He's a psychopath, Now, a sociopath used to be somebody that was more like a career criminal. So when you see, like some Hell's Angel guy that's got tattoos on his neck and has been in and out of prison for, 30, 40 armed robberies, assaults, possession of firearms, possession of narcotics, somebody's got a criminal record as long as your bedroom. These people were typically called sociopaths. So, but what is the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath? Well, they won't say, but I think it's pretty obvious. It's really quite simple. Just like we have gradations among normal people between intelligent and creative and talented and people that are kind of dumb and have no idea. So we have those same kind of gradations among psychopaths. So a psychopath that maybe was born to a good family, like the Rothschilds, or the Clintons or the Bushes, where they're born into a wealthy family of psychopaths that, raised them to be a psychopath. And they got, some kind of a decent education, decent according to, the mores of our current society, which personally I don't think is a decent education, but I'm radical that way. But let's say they got a decent education. So now they go out in the world and they right away get hired for some high-level position and all that. They're still a psychopath. They still cause the same amount of, or maybe more, destruction and evil and misery. That's all they spread around them because the principal characteristic of all these characters is they have no conscience. Let me put that out there first for the listener that doesn't know. All these terms refer to people, psychopath, sociopath, narcissist, refer to people that don't care about anything but themselves. Now, the degree that they don't care about anybody but themselves varies somewhat, In the extreme, they think they're God. And so in the less extreme, they think they're perfect. But basically, It just goes between I'm perfect and I am God, and everyone should bow and worship me while I inflict my wrath on them. you know, that's the two, poles of that kind of
Okay.
dynamic. They
Okay.
don't have a conscience. They don't care about people. They don't care about animals. They don't care about pain and suffering. They don't care that a little baby is hungry. They don't care about that stuff. They only care about themselves. So it's just the level of degree and how destructive they are in society. So the professional psychopath might be some guy that either he was born rich or he, clawed his way up out of the gutter, but now he's in a powerful position. He's a minister, he's a politician, mostly a politician. He's a he's a business leader, anyways, they're still psychopaths. It's
Okay.
just that they're smart enough not to go to jail for it. Now you get a psychopath again that has no conscience, only thinks about themselves, short-term goals, self-aggrandizement, what they want. They're driven by their selfish needs moment by moment, but they're not too bright. So they can't think up, well, how to start a savings and loan company and bilk people out of millions of dollars. So they rob a grocery store.
Okay. Okay.
So that would be the sociopath. However, the last time I read it, they had reversed those two. Now they're saying the sociopaths are professionals and the psychopaths are the grocery store robbers.
Okay.
So I don't know,
Okay.
because they don't know. Again, we're talking about professionals, quote, end quote, uh, and professors. They don't know.
Mhm.
So it's gone back and forth. So for me, it's basically interchangeable. The common denominator is they don't care. They only want what they want, and they don't care if they have to set you on fire to get it. That's what they'll do. Now, the difference, though, is are you dealing with some low level street trash that's just going to take a straight razor to your throat and get your wallet? Or are you dealing with the CEO like, Mark Zuckerberg, classic professional psychopath, who stole the software, screwed all his business partners. Just look at him confess there at that congressional hearing. Oh my God, the guy looks like he should have that Hannibal Lecter mask on him. I mean, this guy is the evil that exudes from his dead eyes is just frightening to watch. I can't eat after watching this guy for 5 minutes.
Well,
So that's the
obviously, you're
difference.
not a big Zuckerberg, but certainly there are people who are doing a lot worse things in the world than Zuckerberg. I mean,
Oh yeah.
there are Putins out there running around. There are Assads out there running around. There are Kim Jong Uns out there running around. The kind of damage that somebody who runs a government with a regardless of how you want to classify them, a malignant personality disorder. These are the kind of people who are really doing the serious damage to the world and have throughout history.
Yeah, the difference is how much power do they have? If you got some low-level psychopath, he has no money, has no education, he had not too high an IQ. Well, you know, like serial killers. Well, they can kill, upwards of 100 people in their lifetime, in their career, maybe 200 people. I forget what the highest number of people killed by a serial. Yeah, okay, a couple of hundred people. But you get a psychopath like George Bush Jr. That launches a war on Iraq that kills 1 million people. What's the difference between the serial killer and George Bush Jr.? Well, the amount of power they have. That's all the difference. Mentally, emotionally, morally, of course, morally, most important. None of them have a moral code. That's the key characteristic of these people. So what is worse? The Green River Killer or George Bush Jr. or Madeleine Albright or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton or Bill Clinton. Well, the Green River Killer, well, we know he killed 40, maybe 80 people. Pretty horrible. Everybody thinks he's like the most evil thing that walked the planet. No, he's nothing. He's a baby compared to the politicians that run this world. They kill hundreds of thousands and millions of people, and they kill them in much more horrible ways than these serial killers do. But, we're all horrified by the serial killer, but we're ready to vote for the other guy. Look, there is no difference between the two. The difference is one guy wears a $5,000 Armani suit, and the other guy wears, a leather jacket. That's the only difference. But they're all psychopaths and sociopaths, and yeah.
Got it. Now, one of the things that I want to get into, when I cycle back to the UFO situation a little bit. Now, you had stated, obviously, that if you were an advanced ET, you would just stay the hell away from planet Earth. And since I think there's at least a good chance that we are being visited every once in a while, you have to think that the psychopath is a pretty interesting subject for research from these advanced ETs. If you were here, if you were able to look at a society run by psychopaths, you might be kind of interested in that. You might get into it a little bit and wonder how the world ticks with those kind of folks in charge.
No, no, they wouldn't be interested in psychopaths at all. Psychopaths are boring. There's nothing to them. They're machines. They're not really human. They don't have a soul. This is what I believe. They have no soul. They have no creative urge. They are just this mindless, sucking machine that completely impersonal to the suffering and sensibilities of people around them. They're not interesting at all because they're all exactly the same. All they care about is themselves, and they will do whatever it takes: lie, cheat, steal, rob, seduce, manipulate, forge, plagiarize, whatever. They'll do whatever it takes to get what they want. It's boring. They're very boring people because you know what they want. Well, what do they want? Money and power, and that, there's nothing interesting about them. So I really don't think that any extraterrestrial or advanced civilization would be the least bit interested in psychopaths. It would be like, coming to planet Earth and finding some great fascination with leeches, or bed bugs. Like, oh, I come to planet Earth, I'm going to study bed bugs. Well, they sneak up on you and they suck the blood out of you. Well, that's what psychopaths do. There's nothing interesting about them. I personally don't think ET would be interested in humanity at all, because the human race, and it's not just me saying this, but because, like I said, I've went through the whole journey of searching for answers. But a lot of the great wise men throughout history, the sages, the philosophers, they've all said the same thing. We are a species that's gone insane. There is something seriously ingrained that is wrong with humanity. Because why? Why would you settle for 5,000, 6,000 years of murder and enslavement and mayhem when you could easily have created paradise all along? Why would you choose the war instead of the peace? Like in my first video on Paradise Stolen. Like, I mean, Americans are perfectly okay with paying taxes, and that costs $6 trillion to bomb Iraq. That's okay. Although, the $6 trillion could have bought a house for every family in America on a nice piece of property with a backyard. Could have done that with the money. No,
Yep.
Let's go kill people that never did anything to us, that we don't know anything about, in a country 99% of Americans couldn't point out on a map. Okay, we have the money to go kill those people, but we don't have the money to create paradise in America for ourselves. So what kind of a species would do that? What kind of a species would choose death and destruction over happiness and harmony and peace every single time? Every single time the government, World War I, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, over and over and over again. Oh yeah, we have billions of dollars to spend killing people. We have no money for homeless people. We got billions of dollars to spend murdering people. We have no money for medical research. I mean, what kind of a species are we that chooses death and destruction over that every time? It's only a species that is completely insane. Now, why would ET come and visit us? Let me ask you, Frank, have you ever been or visited an asylum for the criminally insane?
I have not.
Right. Would you want to go?
Uh, I probably wouldn't seek it out, but you know what? I think if I had the opportunity to do it, let's say I had a friend who worked there and said, "Yeah, stop out for the day and take a look around," I might take him up on that. But it would the opportunity would have to come my way. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't seek it out.
Exactly. You wouldn't seek it out. Now, you wouldn't go there and try and teach them about, uh, uh, give classes on algebra and biology, right?
I probably well, I wouldn't be qualified, but even if I were, I don't think I would. No, I don't. I don't
Well,
know how. I don't know if I would commit to a regular visits. Let's put it that way.
exactly. And that's so you and I wouldn't do it either. I used to play folk music in my younger days.
But obviously, though, Stefan, there are people who do. They work there. You know,
Well,
the
sure.
criminally insane. You know, they're not left to their own devices. There's staff there. There are professional
Sure. They
doctors
get
and all
paid to
that.
be there.
Yeah, yeah, they get paid to be there, right?
So, see, I wouldn't go there, and neither would you, and neither would I go there and attempt to teach them something. So, imagine an alien species, and in order for them to reach this planet from whatever nearest, Alpha Centauri, I believe, is the nearest
Yep,
star, which is what, 4 light years away.
somewhere around there. Yep.
That would take, the space shuttle, what, 150,000 years to get here.
Right,
You know,
right, right.
like they would travel, even if they could travel at the speed of light, which again, all of this is just, we don't know any of this is real. The speed of light, the distance between planets, we don't know that this is real. Yeah, some professors, I don't know. Do I know these guys? Maybe they're idiots. Maybe they're making it up to publish books. What do I know? What I do know is the infinite capability of mankind to deceive themselves and others. So keeping that in mind. So let's
And
say they
so,
get,
just a question I was going to jump in and ask, and
yeah.
now's as good a time as any, was how do these psychopaths get away with it? They run things. Why are they left in charge? I have some ideas of what I think it might be, but I want to know what you think.
I don't know, Frank. That's the big question. And I could describe it in terms of, from a philosophical, kind of, mystical tradition, which, again, most of the great sages and philosophers have described many times, and that is humanity is asleep. They're all sleepwalking. Gurdjieff would say that they're machines. They're just program response machines, very complex ones, very talented complex ones, but that's all it is. And I would have to agree with that. Humanity is asleep, and that's the best case scenario, because if they aren't asleep, then they're insane. So I would prefer to, because if you're awake and you allow all this to happen, then you are insane. Okay, I'm sorry. I mean, why would you allow this? Why would you speak out on? How many people speak out against all these destructive policies from the governments and the schools and the pharmaceutical companies forcing vaccinations and drugs and getting 6-year-old kids to transition into? I mean, come on. Oh my God, they're all insane. Either they're insane or they're asleep and they're being manipulated by psychopaths. So that's the only two choices I can come up with.
Got it.
So to be positive, I would say they're all sleepwalking. And my theory is that you are born with a seed that can grow into a soul, or it will die and then you just become a zombie. And in some people, that seed dies in them very young, and their whole life they're spent as a zombie. And some people, they might live a little bit older, and then the seed dies when in middle age, and then they become a zombie after that. Because if you don't nourish the seed, and you don't water it, and you don't feed it, it won't grow into a soul. I don't believe everybody's born with a soul. I really don't, because I've been around. I look in people's eyes. There's so many times that you meet people and nobody's home. So what does that? What does that mean when nobody's home? Okay, they're not aware. They have a low IQ. But what really does that mean? You have a feeling for it, Frank. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. I do.
Right? You talk to people and there's the lights are on, but there's nobody there. There's nothing behind those eyes. So what is it that you do see when you see somebody that has a light in their eyes? We could make up words for it, but the best word I would say right now is a soul or a spirit. I don't know. What else can you call it? Self-awareness, but either you have it or you don't. And if you don't feed it and nurture the beginnings of this, then it will die. And I think that's why we have so many soulless zombies running around, because I think the educational system and the iPhone and the entertainment, I think it kills that seed. I think you're just pouring poison on it and it never grows. And so now you have a lot of people that they're zombies. There's nothing there. So you could say they're asleep, but if you lose that seed and you lose that spark, yeah, you might be asleep, but you have no chance of waking up. People that still have that spark in them, they can wake up. And I think if you wake up, then the psychopaths will not lead you and influence you. And the problem is that they have control over our society, and everything they do to our society is designed to destroy that seed. So that's how they get away with it. They've destroyed that spark, as in many different ways, the chemtrails, the fluoride in the water, the GMO, the synthetic foods, the education system, on and on and on. All these structures and institutions are designed to kill the human spirit, and they've succeeded magnificently. Look at all the people that are running around. They are completely mesmerized, totally hypnotized by that goddamn smartphone. They no longer experience life firsthand. Everything is a second-hand experience through the cell phone. This is what kills your soul. You have to be in this life to develop this soul. If you're not in the life, then you die, and then there's nothing left but this empty machine that just goes through the paces.
Got it, got it. I'm going to throw in a very famous quote from Lord Acton, who's a 19th century British politician, but it's a pretty famous quote. I'm going to read the whole thing. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It goes a little further than that, though. Usually the first sentence is the one that gets the most attention. But he goes on to say, great men are almost always bad men. So I guess he does allow that sometimes, once in a while, now and again, a decent individual does slip through and rise to the level of having some authority in this world. And I think that's probably correct. I don't think they're all psychopaths, but plenty of them are. But even when they exercise influence, and let me go back to the beginning here. I got sidetracked there. Great men are almost always bad men, even when they exercise influence and not authority. Still more when you superadd the tendency of the certainty of corruption by authority. So this is a guy who kind of knew exactly what we're spending the last hour or so talking about. Didn't have the same verbiage to describe it, but it seems like he hit the nail pretty well on the head.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you read the full quote, because everybody always stops at the first sentence, which is, informative enough. But the full quote really goes into what he thinks about that, and I agree with him. He's right. From my study of history, there have been occasionally benign rulers, like Ashoka in India, or the second Ming emperor, I think it was. What was his name? I forget. And these people kind of came to power by accident. They were born into it, but they weren't psychopaths. So they didn't have to, murder their way to the top like just about everybody else does. And so you will occasionally find rulers that are benign. And when you have, that kind of power, they can do a lot of good in the world. So no, not all of them are psychopaths, but certainly the vast majority.
And a lot of the conflict we see in the world, it seems to be psychopath versus psychopath, like villain versus villain in an old professional wrestling match. They used to book those once in a while, where you'd have two bad guys going up against each other. That seems to be what a lot of the conflict in the world often is. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have any problems going up against their own and starting up with their own. And generating conflicts with them. That doesn't seem to be a problem or a sticking point.
Yeah. No, it's true. For example, just about every ruler throughout history was paranoid. They were terrified of everybody, their family, their closest friends. They distrusted everybody. But you know what? They were right. Everybody is out to get you.
Right.
especially when you at the upper echelons of power, because the upper echelons attract every psychopath in the country. Everybody wants to be a courtier. Everybody wants a position in government. Everybody wants to be a congressman. I mean, everybody that's a psychopath. So once you're at the top there, you are surrounded by psychopaths, and they all want your power. So they all become paranoid. But they're absolutely right in being paranoid because everybody wants to kill them. You know?
And even if you do have some altruistic tendencies, like you're saying, you're surrounded by psychopaths, so you might get some really bad advice and end up doing some very bad things that otherwise you might not do if you had a better brain trust working on your behalf.
Well, you wouldn't be altruistic and last very long. That's the problem. You know, you either cave into the dictates of the social environment, which is psychopathic. I mean, you either become like them, or they will kill you. So, you know, there read numerous stories. You know, two brothers are set to inherit the throne. You know, and the good brother is the eldest, and he should inherit first. But he's got a younger brother, and the younger brother is a psychopath. So guess who inherits the throne?
Right,
Not,
right, right.
right?
Exactly.
Not the older brother. The older brother dies mysteriously, poison, accident, or he just disappears. You know, so you can have altruistic motivations, but not for too long.
Yeah, you gotta toughen up a little bit out there for sure. Now, one question I've got to ask you: we're seeing material from you and some of the people that you cited earlier about what these folks are and what they're all about. Yet at the same time, you can dig and dig and dig, and you don't find any manuals or handbooks or anything along those lines going back years and years on how to be a good psychopath. You know, how to take over your country and kill all your enemies. There's no handbook or rule book for that.
No, there is. There is.
Yet, there is. Okay, which
Oh yeah, there's lots of them.
oh, there are. Okay,
Oh
okay.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
There's
What are some of those?
Machiavelli's The Prince.
The Prince. Okay, okay, okay,
Right? There's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion.
okay.
Whether or not you believe it's a true thing or not a true thing, read that thing. It's a blueprint for how to destroy and subvert and take over any civilization. It works.
Okay.
You know, read the Quran. You know, I mean,
Okay.
there's a lot of blueprints for how to destroy and take over a society written for psychopaths. You know,
Okay. Well, I guess now that
so
I think about it, Mein Kampf might have been one of those too, but I never read that.
actually, I heard it, and no, Mein Kampf isn't.
It
It's
isn't.
not.
Okay. Okay.
No, it's actually, you know, like you have to understand that everything I learned was a lie. So I had to relearn everything in the last 20 years. I'll start from the beginning. And all the things that I assumed were something, like, for example, we all assume like Mein Kampf is some evil book on how to take over the world and kill Jews. Actually, it's nothing like that at all, you know.
Okay.
So, but the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, man, oh man, that is dead on. And
Well,
Mac,
and Hitler also wrote that about 10 years before he took power. And I think he was sitting in jail at the time because of a failed
that's
coup
right.
attempt. So he might have been maybe a little bit cowed in the moment and a little bit more restrained. But well, obviously, we know what the end results were. And I guess he really is kind of the poster boy for what psychopathy at its worst leads to.
Yeah. But again, Frank, you know, I don't believe anything I'm told these days. It's just that after all my many years on this planet, I'm 61, but, you know, I've been studying this stuff since I was 12. So, you know, it's 40 years I've been researching and reading and trying to find out what the truth is. And now I know that everything's a lie. So I don't know. Was he an evil man? I don't know.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. I would.
Yeah, but based on what?
Based on enough evidence from our own guys liberating Germany and discovering what they discovered, and the fact that the war itself started even in the first place.
Yeah, you know, I'm not convinced of any of that. You know
Okay.
what? And also, I'm not convinced that America is the good guy.
Oh
America,
no, no, we have our moments. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the Civil War is the most horrifying. The fact that happened here in the States, not that much more than a century ago, it's just horrifying. It's
yeah,
absolutely horrifying.
horrifying.
All over a desire for some states thinking it's perfectly okay to traffic in human beings. Basically, that's
No, the
really what it
Civil
comes
War
down
wasn't
to.
fought over slavery either.
Well, I'm not so sure about that either. I think
Frank,
that was the main reason. That was the
you
main
got to
reason.
understand that everything we were taught was a lie. None of that is true. And and also, like there are photographs of piles of human heads in piled up in pyramids from the Spanish American War. That when the Americans invaded the Philippines, and that now we're all horrified when we see those videos from Saudi Arabia. They're chopping heads off. Hey, our own guys did that already 100 years ago. Not just a couple of heads, hundreds and hundreds. They piled them up into big piles. I mean, listen, nobody. We live in a psychopathic society, and our history and our education has been molded by these people. So you can't trust anything. That's my premise. So
I
I don't
understand.
know.
Yeah, go out and verify it for yourself. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
convinced. I'm most definitely convinced. But to each his own as far as opinions go.
yeah. No, no. Look, I'm just saying. I'm just giving you my opinion. And whatever I say, I preface it with the idea that I don't know what I'm talking about either. Okay. Ultimately, none of us know. There's a saying that the scholar knows the world and calls this knowledge. The sage knows nothing and calls this wisdom. So I'm at the sage level. I
Understood.
don't know anything.
Understood.
I don't know
Understood.
anything, but there's a certain wisdom in saying that you don't know anything, because all of this stuff, all of it comes through books written by people you and I have never met, who may or may not have done the real research, who may or may not have fudged the statistics or the figures or the stories, who may have been influenced about tilting and slanting his books to sell more copies to make more money. We don't know this stuff. So yeah, okay, the teacher didn't, there's 10 books written on the Civil War. Oh, we were the South wanted slavery and the North didn't. Well, but to be honest with you, just as many books that, the Democrats were the ones that were all in favor of slavery, and certainly Lincoln was a tyrant from hell. The guy was evil son of a bitch. I'm glad his wife shot him. Um, but we have statues to him.
Yep.
Okay, we live in a society where we take the greatest mass murderers and we build monuments in their honor, like Churchill and Lincoln and General Pershing, that goddamn bastard. When I read what he did in World War I, but no, they named the tank after him. There's a big statue of him in West Point, General Pershing. The First World War. What an evil son of a bitch! Oh my God! So this is the world we live in. We create monuments to the worst monsters our society produces. So why am I going to believe anything? I don't care if everybody thinks Lincoln was a great man. We know what he really did. He rounded up people that disagree with him. He shut down the newspapers. He ran concentration camps where prisoners were abused in horrific manners. I mean, all of this is documented too, right? The
Yep.
people that write his biography do not deny that he did all these things, but he's still a great man. Oh, no, no. Look, I'm sorry. I'm a great man, okay? I never killed anybody. I never tortured anybody. I never imprisoned anybody. That's saying more about me than just about every historical figure in American history.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Sorry, Frank. I know I get a little bit heated about this, but ultimately we got to understand that we really don't know things. So the same thing with the UFO, and I remember you were talking earlier about the alternative energy, our psychopaths suppressing that. Absolutely.
Oh, you think
Like
so?
I
Okay.
do
Okay.
believe there is unlimited free energy. I am a firm believer in Tesla. I mean, like, see, for me, there's empirical evidence. I don't believe in channeling, all this information that comes through channeling and all that. I think it's a lot of horseshit. But Tesla channeled this stuff.
He
He
did.
he writes that he channeled it. He writes that it came from a source outside himself that worked through him. Now, normally I would say, again, another one of these lunatics full of crap channeled this. Yeah, okay. But
Your
my God,
electricity works because of Tesla, alternating current.
it works. Look at what he invented and built. Oh my God, the evidence is irrefutable. Every time I turn on the engine on the car, there's an electric motor that starts it. There's an alternator that changes the currency. There's a spark plug. I mean, the radio, the internet. I mean, he invented all this stuff and he channeled it. So what am I going to say? I don't believe in channelers. Somebody tells me, oh, they channeled some, ET alien from the Cassiopeia galaxy. Oh, come on, Jesus Christ. Okay, I will believe you in all the channeling, and I've had conversations because I know a few people that they run large cults, people that follow them because they channel stuff, right?
Okay.
And they get direct information from ETs in another galaxy. Okay, all right, okay. Did they give you the formula to cure cancer? Because that would really be a help, okay?
Yeah, let's get something that works. Let's get something in here that works.
Can you give me one thing that works? Just one. Okay, I don't care if 90% of it is about, Jesus was an alien or Bigfoot is the advanced scouting party for another. I don't care about all that stuff. Okay, great. That'd be wonderful if it was true. Very interesting, makes a good story. But in all your channeling, did you ever once come across anything like, oh, well, if you put together these two ingredients, you can run your car on water? Something. Oh, my God, something. But Tesla did. So I cannot discount channeling because Tesla obviously was the real deal. But everybody else that's claiming channeling this and that and the other, well, give me something, one goddamn thing that would be a benefit to humanity and not some vague riddle,
some new agey stuff, some new age bromide, something like that.
Yeah,
that we shouldn't need an advanced civilization to help us figure it out to begin with.
Exactly. So I absolutely believe there's unlimited free energy. I have no doubt about that. I believe Tesla was one of these guys that actually could tap in to a cosmic kind of awareness or consciousness. There's no other explanation for it. I have to believe it because what other theory or paradigm can you come up with that would explain that other than that he really did do that?
But, and he still had the chops behind it to sort of figure it out and piece it together.
Yeah.
Let's say that I did. Let's say that tonight I decided to meditate and contact an advanced ET. Even if they gave me all that information, I might not be able to. I probably wouldn't be able to understand it and figure it out and do anything with it. You still have to have the basic knowledge of the science behind it to be able to make some practical use of it.
Well, I could give you the recipe to bake bread. Wouldn't be. Flour, baking soda, water.
It's easy enough for me to spend $1 at the food store and pick up my own, to tell you the truth.
But I mean, you could channel that, and it wouldn't be beyond your capabilities of putting it into action. I remember I read a lot of Edgar Cayce stuff. I read everything from Edgar Cayce. Remember that?
Sure, absolutely. Sleeping Prophet.
Yeah, the Sleeping Prophet. I read everything about it, and I was really interested in his cures for the various diseases. And what the major ingredient that he prescribed for all these people was gelatin, right?
Really? Okay.
Yeah, gelatin. Just you can get a drugstore, go and get gelatin caplets. I think it's $2 for 500, right? It's just the same stuff as in Jell-O. For some reason, he prescribed that. Now, they claim it worked and this, that, and the other. And castor oil. He liked to prescribe castor oil.
Okay.
And so it's not beyond your capabilities, right? I mean, if one of these channelers could say, well, the way to, live an extra 20 years is, eat castor oil and gelatin,
Well, if it worked, I could handle that, no problem.
Exactly. So it doesn't always, Tesla, yeah, the complexity of the inventions and beyond my scope too, Frank. I wouldn't be able to put that stuff together. I know a little bit of electronics. I put together a bunch of Heath kits when I was a kid. You remember that?
Yeah. I can swap out a hard drive. I can do that.
Yeah,
I can change the CPU.
I can change. I did it a couple of years ago. Mine was heating up too much.
Yep.
So we can do stuff like that. I cannot invent a Tesla coil from scratch.
No. Even with the blueprints, I'd have some trouble. But okay, so we've got this problem. We've got the psychopath issue to deal with here. As a humanity, they're a little bit different than the rest of us. Do you ever see it getting solved? Do Do you see us overcut? We're not going to be able to round them up and eliminate them. I mean, that would be psychopathic in itself. So that's not really a solution. Fight psychopathy with psychopathy. Seems like we've done a fair amount of that throughout history, and we don't want to. We don't want to go there. What do we do, and are we ever going to be successful at it?
No.
Okay.
We're doomed. No, there is no successful mechanism to eliminate them from society because it's like you said. Let's say we come up with a test, and then we're going to abort every baby that has this genetic makeup. But there would be some babies that we would have had a mistaken identification of, and we'd be killing innocent children.
Right.
Or we wait till they're grown up, and then we do a psychological test on them, and then we round them up and throw them into prison. Now, if that ever came about, the first people that would be in charge of those tests
would be psychopaths. Yeah, exactly.
So, and you can't win with this, right? Because they would infiltrate it, right? So if we were to say, okay, we're going to round up all the psychopaths and put them in gas chambers, well, guess who'll be doing the rounding up, and guess who'll be getting gassed? It'll be the psychopaths rounding up the people that have conscience. So that
can be too.
There is no mechanism whereby we can use state enforcement to stop this, because they control the state and they'll be in charge of it.
Right.
So there's no mechanism. So how else can we do it? Well, the only other possibility is that we wake up enough people, but that's never going to happen either. It's a sad and tragic fact that 70, 80% of the human population, they're just hopeless idiots. They're not going to wake up. They're not going to get it. They're not going to change their lifestyle. They're not going to take an interest in their society. They're not going to be able to have the balls and the courage to fight back against these people. They're sheep. They go with the flow. They're machines. They're just programmed by media and education. Everything they think, everything they feel, their favorite color, all of that's already been programmed into them. They never decided any of that. They are not authentic. None of this stuff comes from some deep well of spiritual understanding or anything like that. My favorite color is pink. Well, every girl is going to say that, because guess what? Pink Barbie dolls, they grew up with it. Was every commercial has pink for the girls. So now all these girls think pink is their favorite color. I mean, and that goes for everything else in the world. It's all been programmed. So you cannot, it's like I say, you can't convince a toaster to become a refrigerator.
Okay.
You can't talk them into, listen, you don't want to be a toaster. You want to be a microwave. Yeah, a microwave. You can't do that. You're talking about people that are incapable of self-reflection, self-awareness, self-direction. They can't focus and change themselves. You cannot get them to wake up. And so if they don't wake up, they're going to be in control of the people that are happy to manipulate them, happy to take advantage of them, and that's going to be the psychopaths. See, I know there's a lot of stupid people around me, and, I could screw them, I could take advantage of them, I could convince them to lend me money or sleep with me.
And never pay them back.
And never pay them back.
Yeah.
And,
That's the key.
Phony investment scams. I mean, I know, because I know what the psychopaths know. I know how they think. And I know that they look on these people as deserving what they get because they're stupid. See, I can't do that. Even though I do believe they don't have a lot on the ball, I still think it's immoral for me to use my intellect or whatever it is to take advantage of it. It's immoral. I won't do it. It would be like me taking advantage of retarded people. Why?
Right,
I would never do that. It would never occur to me. Or me taking advantage of young children.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could never do that. It's
dishonorable. It's
dishonorable and it's immoral. So even though technically I have the knowledge. Sure, I know how these guys work. I read books on con artists and every con in the world. I mean, volumes and volumes. I mean, it's a fascinating subject. I mean, and it goes back thousands of years. Even ancient Rome, they all had con artists running scams. Even ancient China, there's all these con scams that they were running, just like today. I can't do that. And I know the psychopaths look on these people as like, you deserve it. You're too stupid to figure out I'm screwing you, so screw you. That's how they think. I can't think like that. So how can we defeat the psychopaths? Well, you'd have to wake the people up, but you can't wake them up. You can't enforce any kind of a government program to rid our society of them. So that's not going to work. So what's left?
Right.
What can we do to fight against them? There's nothing.
Yeah,
There's nothing.
just as individuals, be aware of it and protect yourself at all times. That's really about it.
Exactly. As
If
an
I'm okay,
individual,
okay.
people can, and that's why I created the video defense against the psychopath. It wasn't to solve society's problems because that's almost unsolvable. We are a species that's completely insane. So how are we going to, how are you going to get, hey, exercise, you can say that to a schizophrenic and it may or may not help. I don't know. But if you, but we're a species that's insane. So on a societal level, I don't think there is an answer. But on a personal level, which is why I made the video and why I put that chapter in my book, The Art of Urban Survival, is at least what I can do is help individuals protect themselves personally so that you personally won't get screwed over by these people, that you won't marry one, that you won't, go into business with one. Man,
Right,
that will
right,
save
right.
you a lot of trouble if you can avoid that. And so on a one-to-one level, I can help people through my writing and through my talks. And that's what I try to do. That's why I do these shows. But on a societal level, no, I don't have any answers.
Got it. Got it. Well, on that positive note, Stefan, it's been a fantastic hour plus. I'm glad you came on. I hope people give this a listen. We didn't delve too much into the UFO stuff, but I think we covered the psychopath stuff very well. If VT's visiting, then he's got to take an interest. Maybe disagrees with you a little bit and thinks it's a little bit more interesting than you would if you were able to travel the galaxy in a spaceship. But this was a lot of fun. If you had half as much fun as I did talking this last hour plus, then you had a
Oh
great
yeah,
time.
Fred.
I'll tell you that. And
Okay.
again, I'm so glad you did it. I think folks ought to avail themselves of the information that you've got out there. And again, protect yourself at all times, folks. And maybe we will figure it out. We'll keep talking about this, and maybe some ideas will come to the fore. We'll have a better world, maybe within the next few years. You never know. But your work it's a step in the right direction, Stefan. I sure appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Frank, and thanks for being a supporter of my work for so many years.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, you know what? I didn't really get into this. We've got that. You got a little bit of time. I'll get into it a little bit. Yeah, obviously, long before I knew who you were, I kind of figured this out for myself that you were 100% correct about the various malignant personality types just through bad experiences in life, and the couple of people I came across, they were assholes to such level. I thought to myself, there's got to be a clinical name for this.
Yeah.
And I typed in, and went to a Google search and typed in what I thought was wrong with the person that I was having the issues with. And lo and behold, I came across it. And
Yeah.
I do believe that you've got this nailed, and keep up the good work.
Oh, thanks, Frank. And again, it's for us as individuals. I mean, I have a bleak picture of the society as a whole, but it doesn't mean that each person can't live a happy, fulfilling life.
Yep.
And that's the whole point of all my writings is to give people the tools that, you can't save society, but you can save yourself and you can save your family.
Yep. And I guess if enough of us do it, maybe society benefits in some way, shape, or form,
It
too.
would. It would. If enough of us do it, the rest of society benefits as well.
Alrighty, fantastic, Stefan. Well, you stay in touch, and I'm going to wrap the show up. And folks, we got some more great guests coming. We're going to have some challenging guests with some interesting ideas continuing through the fall. So thanks for tuning in tonight, and catch us next time around. You have a nice night. Bye bye now.
Bye bye. Bye bye.